All right, so we are looking at posture again today. We're going to be on posture pretty much every day till the end of the course here. And we are getting into our dynamic movement assessments, right? So we've kind of covered static assessments, right? We've got three major postural distortions with static assessments. That was the pronation distortion, aka pes planus. We've got the lower cross syndrome and the upper cross syndrome, right? Those are our kind of three big static distortions. So now let's say we don't necessarily get like a breakdown, right? We see somebody, standing with a static posture, their feet look relatively fine, their knees look relatively fine. But it's during a squat action that we start to see like the knees cave in. So that's where we're going to do like a slightly different version of a fitness assessment. So class is gonna the tone of the class is gonna change just a little bit starting today, because there are a lot of postural distortions in the overhead squat. Those of you who've been with me for a bit, you'll know that there's kind of 5 big ones in your standard textbook, and then they add even more in the corrective exercise textbook. So if we go to Nasm's website and we go down to the downloads tab and we find, that's the wrong button. The Recertify for Life tab. By the way, actually, just while I'm here, this Recertify for Life thing, it's like $400. You pay it one time, and then you don't have to pay the $200 recertification fee every 2 years, and just takes the fee away. You still have to do your continuing ed, but like super worth it. So we go down here and we look at our assessments form. We go to that static assessment. There's the sort of quick fix tables that we were looking at, right? Like there's the pes planus, and there's lower cross, and there's upper cross, but there's also the overhead squat version, right? So we're going to see a couple big ones here. We're going to see the feet turn out, similar to like with our static assessment. We're going to see the knees cave in, similar to our static assessment. But now during a squat, we're sometimes going to see excessive trunk leaning, excessive forward leans, which is a little bit of a different one. That is actually going to have 2 problems. So that one's going to get a little complicated. Low back arching. That one also has 2 problems in the overhead squat version. Arms falling forward, and then we'll see pushing and pulling assessments over the next couple of days, where we'll see scapular elevation and forward head posture, which is very similar to our upper cross syndrome. So a lot of these same muscles that we've already been studying are going to kind of come back on our lists here. We're going to see those again. But we're going to see, like, as we put more stress on the body, we've got more ways for the body to sort of experience postural distortions, right? So again, just as a review, posture, the alignment and function of all of the components of the human movement system at any given time, right? So like posture is sort of how our kinetic chain is lined up. It's how our skeletal system is sitting at a proper resting position. It's how our nervous system is sort of controlling our muscular system to keep it in that ideal resting position, right? So in order for us to have proper movement or neuromuscular function, as they're saying, right, we need to have proper alignment. And so as we're talking about proper alignment, we are looking at those length tension relationships. Again, if we even just like pull up a diagram for length tension relationship here, we're going to see there's sort of 2 versions of this, right? Remember, it's the length of a muscle and the amount of force that it's able to produce at that length, right? That's the length tension relationship. There is sort of the ideal version of a length tension relationship, which is the ideal resting length of a muscle, where there's the greatest degree of overlap of the actin and myosin proteins. So looking at like, this picture right here, which is highly pixelated, so we're not looking at that picture right there. There we go. Here's the kind of classic one. So looking at this picture right here, this is a chart that's actually representing how much tension a muscle is able to generate, right? So this muscle right here, like this is a scale of 0 to 100, right? And the 100 represents a muscle producing as much tension as possible. And then it would go down from there, right? So here's the normal ideal resting length, all right? And you can see the myosin proteins there in the middle. You see the actin proteins straddling it on both sides, right? So those little heads are going to reach up and grab. And there's a really good amount of overlap, but there's also a lot of room to move. So this is the ideal amount of overlap we want to see, And then we have over here, this is a decreased length in fibers, right? What you can see is like these proteins have already kind of overlapped, right? You see how there's, you can see how there's very little room to move. Like there's lots of room to move here. There's lots of room to move here, and there's lots of room to move here, right? But in this version, it's like they're already overlapped, right? We already see that dysfunction, right? They're overlapped so much already. So then our power output has decreased by, in this example, 20%. And then over here, look, they're extremely overlapped. That's a very contracted muscle, and that power is basically decreased by 90% at this point. Like that's a muscle that's really going to be just like locked up, can't really contract any further. And this, you're not going to see somebody's posture like fully locked up like that. Like this example here is actually probably just referring to somebody who's already like mid contraction. They just don't have any more room to go. That's more likely what this example is. But imagine like sitting like this passively, right? And you're just losing 20% of your max effort. Well, the same thing is true on the other side of the joint, right? We can see like there's not very much overlap here, and these proteins don't have anything to grip. So this is also decreased by 20% strength, And so if we were to look at this, as like that classic chart that I kind of pull up in class sometimes, if we look at muscle imbalance, right? When we see like an overactive versus an underactive muscle, this is really what we're seeing here, right? We're seeing just this side right here. We're seeing like there's our overactive fibers on this side of the joint, right? The connection between like these two. And then there's sort of a connection between these two here, right? We can see, that's really what we're referring to. And both of them are experiencing like, decreased strength, right? So those it's happening at a cellular level. It's the proteins that are not overlapping the way we want them to. So we want to make sure that we're getting to a place where we can, pull on those fibers and get them back into alignment so that we have an ideal length tension relationship, right? We have an ideal resting length of the muscle so that it can produce an ideal amount of tension. And then it's a relationship between the agonist and the antagonist. So we want both of those muscles on both sides of the joint to work properly, right? And so that's really what we're seeing with a muscle imbalance, right? We're seeing an overactive muscle on one side that's shortened, right? So for instance, if the client is experiencing the knees caving in, we look at what muscle concentrically pulls during like adduction or internal rotation, whatever the action it is that we're looking at, right? Let's go ahead and look at one that we haven't talked about yet, at least in this course, right? We haven't talked about like a client who can't get their arms up, right? So they have a problem with their arms falling forward. So they're squatting, and this is maybe as high as they can raise their arms, right? Ideally, they should be able to get them to here, but they're kind of stuck like this, right? So what muscle pulls our arms this way? That's what we're going to look at. Whatever muscle is like pulling our arms down. Well, that's going to be primarily the latissimus dorsi. Your lats are mostly responsible for what we call shoulder extension, right? That action right there. So different example than we're seeing here. But if a client exhibits, we're going to say arms fall forward, then it's the latissimus dorsi, which is responsible for that shoulder extension to be in a shortened state. Meanwhile, the muscles that are lengthened are going to be our shoulder flexion muscles, right? Our shoulder muscles that are going to raise our arms up overhead. So that's a muscle. An underactive muscle is a muscle in a lengthened or relaxed state, right? So if our client is experiencing the knees caving in, they need to work on their medial glute, which is exactly the opposite of adduction. It primarily does abduction, right? Same thing is true with the arms falling forward, right? The muscles we're going to want to strengthen are going to be like our deltoid rotator cuff muscles primarily, the ones that allow us to get our arms up overhead. On the list, you will also see the lower traps be on that list, and the upper traps, or I'm sorry, the middle and lower traps be on that list. Sometimes kind of weird because you're like, isn't that those are scapular retractors? Like, what does that have to do with going this way? It actually doesn't have much to do with it, but a lot of the reason why the arm falls forward as well is because of that scapular protraction. So when we protract, remember when we did that in class, we couldn't get our arms up overhead, right? So when you retract middle and lower traps, it allows you to get the bone back in alignment. Just so that I can make that example clear for anybody who's like, those muscles aren't on the list if you've been memorizing your lists. But there's our overactive, underactive state, right? There's our altered length tension relationship, or our muscle imbalance, right? So what we're seeing is an example of reciprocal inhibition. Okay, so just as a reminder for those of you who've been through our other classes, reciprocal inhibition is when we contract one muscle and the antagonist muscle relaxes, right? If I look up reciprocal inhibition here, let's take a look on the old interwebs, and what we're going to see is they're using an example of like the leg swinging forward, right? So what's going to happen is like, and we'll go ahead and just ignore this one, this wire right here. That's the sensory information coming in. They're doing a knee reflex test here. And so they're going to smack this. That's going to send an information in, and then the nervous system is going to choose the appropriate response. So the appropriate response is going to be two signals at the same time. One that's going to go to the agonist muscle. In this case, that's the quadriceps, and one signal that's going to go to the antagonist muscle, that's the hamstring. So what's going to happen is a contraction signal is going to go to the quadriceps, and an inhibition signal is going to go to the hamstrings, right? So that is reciprocal inhibition. It's the seesaw, right? When the agonist contracts, our antagonist lets go, right? And so that is how our nervous system is supposed to be arranged. Now, when we have a muscle imbalance, right, we've got this muscle over here that's just like refusing to let go, right? We've got like this big overactive muscle that's like, you know, the underactive muscle's like, excuse me, sir, like it's my turn to contract. And then the overactive muscle's like, yeah, well, too bad, I'm not letting go, you know, like, and it's just kind of bullying the other muscle and preventing it from being able to do what it needs to do, you know? So then we have what we call altered reciprocal inhibition, which is, we can think of it as, you know, I would redefine this. I would say jacked up reciprocal inhibition, or screwed up, or not working. Ineffective reciprocal inhibition. It's where an overactive agonist decreases the drive to the antagonist, right? So it's just not working the way it's supposed to. There it is. What's up, Simon? I've been noticing you've been trying to get your audio working for like a few minutes now. Glad you got it fixed.
Yeah, no, I got distracted with something. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no sweat at all. I was like, oh no, he's pinwheeling. So those are the two different versions of that there, right? Ideally, we would have had, you know, it'd be like, oh, sir, I would like to contract. You know, it's my turn. Would you please let go? And the other muscle would be like, of course, good sir. You know, like our muscles are supposed to work together, but sometimes they don't, because maybe we are sending a nervous system signal all day. You got to remember, guys, your neurons are not only like they're, you got to remember, they're cells, right? They're physical things, right? And we haven't talked about this in a while, but the way our neurons work, if we look at like what an action potential is, it's an electrochemical signal, right? So there's literally electricity running through our neuron. And when that happens, like what happens when you run electricity through something? It gets burnt, right? This is actually why our habits are so hard to change. Like we talk about this a lot in our behavior change class, right? Like our exercise psychology. We talk about like how difficult it is for us to change our habits, right? That is, yes, psychological for sure, but it is also like physical, you know, like this is like a tangible, you can hold it and touch it thing that's happening, you know? because like when we run electricity through a neuron, it gets a little burnt, you know, it's literally electricity. So imagine if that's happening over and over and over and over again, you're burning it better and better and like deeper and deeper and deeper. And so now those neurons are like, we're great at, you know, turning on, right? We got all these grooves, you know, just like you kind of like first time you ever go to work, like if first time you ever drive somewhere you've never driven before, you know, you're taking all these different routes, you're trying to figure out like which is the best way to go. You're like, oh God, I'm stuck in traffic. Let me try this street instead of that street. And then eventually you're like, I know a route, right? I'm gonna cut over here. I'm gonna go down that alley. I'm gonna do this, right? Like when I lived in Hollywood, that's how I survived. You know, like I would take like little like side routes everywhere, because it was just a little bit faster. You know, you go over Outlook. For anybody who lives in Hollywood, like instead of like trying to go up freaking Highland, you know, like that was like the sneaky way to go, you know. And now everybody knows about it, so I don't think it's faster anymore. But when I first moved here, that was the hack. So our neurons, our nervous system gets better at using things the more it uses them. And that's why, you know, our nervous system is controlling these overactive muscles. There's a passive 24 hours a day, 365 days a year freaking signal being sent to our muscle to just passively contract it all the time. And so then we lose strength on the other side of the joint, you know? And that's what we're seeing here, right? So we're going to go ahead and look into some of our more dynamic posture assessments, right? We've kind of talked this to death. We kind of know, you know, a lot of what starts to happen with these predictable patterns of injury, you know. And so one of the ones that we're going to look at is our dynamic posture assessments, right? So these are the slightly more advanced versions of like movement patterns, right? Rather than just letting our client sort of stand there and looking at their posture like statically, right? Now we are going to have them move a joint through a range of motion, right? And you'll see sometimes like people will not be able to move those joints through the range of motion properly, you know? Like for instance, if you can't create enough dorsiflexion, right? So if I type limited dorsiflexion into the internet, I will probably see a picture of somebody squatting. I guess it's just a lot of pictures of the ankle, which also makes sense, but yeah. See, most of the time we're talking about this from the perspective of like a squat, actually. So limited dorsiflexion, right? So we got a muscle, we got somebody who has just a little bit too much plantar flexion. You know, maybe they spend all day in plantar flexion and they never get a chance. Oh, there's a squat picture. They never get a chance to do like dorsiflexion, right? It could be because they're wearing shoes with an elevated heel all day. Could be because maybe they just have like, you know, generally bad habits, right? There's a lot of different things that can kind of cause this. So we see somebody who really just can't, you know, bring that ankle back, right? Take a look here. You can see this is negative 40 degrees of angle, and this is negative 45 degrees. And this is where the freaking world is going. Like I had to use goniometers when I was in school. Now they got freaking phones that can do it, like tell you the degrees of angle and stuff. But you can see like this is 5 degrees more of dorsiflexion. Now, if we have limited dorsiflexion, when we try to bring our thigh down like this and our shin forward like this, if this ankle can't move into this range of motion, what's going to end up happening is as we squat down, it's going to feel like you're falling backwards. All the weight is going to shift posteriorly because you're sticking your butt out because it's a squat, you know? So what ends up happening is you end up in a squat where you are completely leaning forward like this. So what they're doing here with this little board, they're having this person, they put it here, and so their knees can't travel any further forward. So they're falsely limiting this person's ability to dorsiflex. Because dorsiflexion, you know, it is an ankle movement, but remember, if your knee comes forward, it's the same action, right? Like it's the same position, you know, as if you were standing just by yourself and just raising your foot up. You know, like this happens during a squat, right? Your shin travels forward or your toe comes up. In this case, they're blocking the knee from being able to travel forward. So the shin can't come forward. So what happens, look at his angle here, right? Let's put another one of these up. Look at his angle from like, you know, we'll go center of his hip and travel out his shoulders. And then we'll go from ankle and we'll travel up his, that's not, I didn't line that up properly. Travel, I think I just got too thick of a line here. But you see if his shin travels up his knee, right? So look at the angles between those two lines. They intersect, right? They're going to bump into each other. Whereas this version, we go hip out the shoulder, ankle out the knee. It's much more parallel. It's not perfect, but like it's obviously much better. This is what we want in a squat. We want to have like these parallel lines here instead of this, right? So this person has limited dorsiflexion because they're putting a board in his way, right? So then he ends up with like an alteration in his posture. So a dynamic postural assessment or a dynamic postural movement is where we draw certain joints through specific ranges of motion. So by definition, they're postural assessments that relate to basic functions such as squatting, pushing, or pulling. Those are the three that we're mainly going to look at. And then balancing as well. We'll look at what happens if you do it on one leg, and puts a specific type of stress on the kinetic chain. That way, we can really look at some of these joint actions. So this can also be incorporated as like a first workout for your clients. One of the things that I love about these dynamic assessments is, especially with beginner clients, if you have them do like a couple sets of like these movement assessments, they'll be sweating a little bit by the end of it. You're doing a squat, a press, and a pull. That's almost total body. I mean, we're missing a little bit of shoulder stuff in there, we're missing some core stuff in there, but like it can kind of feel like that first session workout. And again, if you're trying to sell personal training to someone, you need to show them that you're knowledgeable, that you're customizing the routine to them, and that you can kick their butt. Like that's really what everybody's hiring us for, right? They're looking to get their butts kicked. So in some capacity. So we got to make sure that we are giving our clients the effort that they're looking for, and so that's going to happen if you do like an overhead squat, you do a pushing assessment, you do a pulling assessment, you do a single leg squat. And then remember, we've done we maybe did the YMCA step test, or maybe we did the Rockport walk test, right? And so now, like over the course of an hour, they're going to be sweating up a storm, Now, obviously, if they're like a high level athlete, maybe not so much. And that's where you can move through the assessments quickly, burn some time, save some time, burn some time. That's not what I was saying. Save some time. And then, maybe put them through like a little circuit at the very end as well. A lot of different ways. Every one of you guys are going to come up with your own different like sales techniques. My favorite thing to do would be, I used to love to just like kick people's butt a little bit like during my fitness assessments, then come back and be like, here's what I saw during your workout today. And then I would show them this. I'd be like, now this is, and then I would take 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the session. And I would literally just take my assessment form and flip it over. And I would build them like a workout A and a workout B. I'd do like a very, very simple A-B program on the back of that sheet of paper with just like a pen, and just very simply just be like, do squats on this day, do a hinge movement on this day, and I would just build like a workout super fast with a couple stretches specifically designed for them. And I'd be like, there you go, there's your workout. And they'd be like, God, this is the best hour ever. This was free, for signing up. And I was like, I mean, here's the thing. If you want somebody to show you how to do everything that I just laid out for you, I would love that person to be me. And if you want to do that, here are our training packages, and this is what it looks like. And they'd be like, by that point, they'd be chomping at the bit to sign up for personal training. And if they don't want to sign up for training, guess what? I feel really good about myself. I got to do my job, and I built a workout for someone that I do. Like if they Google all that stuff and they do it properly, they're still going to get really good results. I don't feel like a sleazy salesperson, my fitness assessment process makes every part of the rest of personal training easier. And it all kind of comes down to, how well I'm able to kind of execute these things. So today we're mostly looking at the overhead squat. You'll notice like we've got it looks like a lot of notes. It's mostly just like these big lists of what muscles are doing what. But we're going to look at our overhead squat analysis today. as our first sort of like dynamic assessment. And so what the overhead squat is sort of by definition, because it is, you'll see like, you'll get this definition. It'll be, in your textbook as like, or I'm sorry, not in your textbook, in like your homework and stuff. It'll be like blank is designed to assess flexibility, blah, 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 blah. So you do need to know the definition just in case that comes up. It's a postural assessment that is designed to assess dynamic flexibility instead of static flexibility, right? Static was just standing there. Dynamic is moving. And integrated total body strength. Total body strength, the great thing about the overhead squat is the fact that it does move pretty much all of your joints, or at least some of the main joints responsible for movement through full ranges of motion. We're going to be looking at the ankles, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, and even your neck has to stabilize while you're moving through this range of motion. So those 5 key kinetic chain checkpoints are really where we're paying most of our attention. If we're getting into like elbows, we probably need like an elbow specific assessment, which Nasm doesn't really provide us much with. Same thing with the wrist. Obviously you could do finger assessments, like there's all kinds of like other joints in the body, but these are sort of like our 5 key main areas related to, healthy human movement and athleticism, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a video here that's going to kind of break down Nasm's overhead squat. And by the way, if you do actually, let me go back to Nasm's website here. I told you guys there's all these like free resources on Nasm's website. If you go to the trainer resources tab and you just go to like the downloads section, there's all these free mini courses. Is that actually, it's not the mini course, it's the webinar. Right, sorry, there's all these webinars. I mean, there are mini courses, but the webinars are like, there's a lot of them on there. Corrective exercise, OPT. Oh, I'm actually not seeing the push. Oh, that's funny. I know there's one on here. It might be like, yeah, I don't think they put every episode of everything on here actually. Yeah, they're not putting every single thing on here, but if you get into like the podcast network and all this other stuff, you'll find they have like a really like detailed like 30-minute breakdown on the overhead squat. Now, hopefully I'm going to do that for you guys, so you won't necessarily have to use those things. But let's go ahead and just watch one of Nasm's videos here. So we're going to look at NASM overhead squat here. And look at sort of a detailed breakdown of this. It's not that one. I always fall for that one. Where are you at, Rick? Nasm, you gotta brand better so that your videos show up first. Aren't the ones I want. All right, I'm gonna click one of these and see if it comes up in the other versions. Pause that. Let me try pushing and pulling. Okay, there we go. There's the push and the pull. This is good. Now give me the squat. Oh, you are killing me. Some feet turn out. There it is. Good Lord. Okay. So here's a quick little video on what would happen if your client's feet turn out. Okay. So we're gonna look to see like what this, how to perform the assessment, and then like what it sort of means here. And I need to put this share sound on because I forgot that. All right.
Hey y'all, this is Rick. I'm with Annie, NASM, and I've been watching Annie's overhead squat, and she's got her feet turning out like this, all right? So as her feet turn out, we're going to go through a corrective exercise series with Annie to try to remedy that. So the first thing we're going to look at is we have to release some muscles. So the muscles we're going to release are going to be the calves, right? So gastrocnemius, the soleus. Then we're going to go through some lengthening techniques for that. So we're going to stretch them. And then we're going to activate the underactive muscles. We're looking at the anterior and the posterior tibialis. I'm going to show you where those are and how to do them. And then we're going to get into some more of like an integrated stabilization technique so that we get her functioning in normal movement patterns, not just an isolated movement pattern. So Annie, let's get started. So we're just going to show you what to do on the right side. Now, this is going to be the highlight version. So Annie's going to do is she's going to release these calves, keep the foot completely relaxed, and she's going to do a search and destroy. So she's going to roll through, try to find out where those tense spots are. Now what she's done is she's taken the other leg, added it on top, put some weight on it, put a little bit of pressure on it. Now she's lifted up her backside. She's going to put a little more pressure on it, but make sure these muscles stay relaxed in the feet. All right. Now, once Annie finds that spot, I'm going to have her just rest her backside down, and then she can take that top leg and put some additional pressure on it, so that way she's not holding herself up the entire time. Some of your clients, like Annie, will be able to do it. Some of the clients not going to be able to do it. Might hurt people's wrists, so just have a seat when you do this. That's what I do. So now she's gone through the release, the iliopsoleus, the gastrocnemius release. Normally, you'd look for at least 2 spots released for 30 seconds. Let's assume that we've done that. Hop up and let's get some stretching in. So we're going to do a stretch specifically for the calves here. So Annie's going to go into that stretch. Now realize that her feet turn out. So when she stretches, that foot's going to have to be straight ahead, maybe even slightly internally rotated, because if it's short this way, then we're going to lengthen it more by straightening it up. So let's keep it in a neutral position. And what Annie can do here is that normally she'd be up against a wall or she'd be on a slant board, so we're just giving you the visual. What I want you to do, go ahead and press into me if you need to, lean forward. She's going to drive the heel into the ground. You're going to lock out your knee, and then, strangely, but this works, she's going to squeeze her glute. So get that butt cheek squeezed, glutes tight, quads tight, heel drives down. And it's interesting, the glute squeeze it actually helps her to supinate, which gets her out of pronation. So we're going to go through this, and it's just a perfect example of how connected the body is, right? So glutes tight, quads tight, heel driven down. She's released that muscle for 30 seconds. Let's go into some activations. So the activation, she's going to stay on that same foot. And I'm going to have Annie now go into let's do an isolated activation, and then we'll do an integrated activation. So go ahead and let's drop you down. Put your foot on the roller. And she's going to do an activation for her anterior tibialis. So the tibia is this bone right here. Anterior tibialis is this muscle. You can see it on this leg. So that muscle activates by going into dorsiflexion and inversion. So this is eversion. This is inversion. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to resist that. So I'm going to resist dorsiflexion, which is the foot going up, and inversion. So I'm pulling at this angle. I'm also holding her ankle because I don't want to pull this direction and make her hip work. So I'm just going to stabilize it.
Can you guys tell they're using a green screen, by the way? Like, it looks like the band is like invisible. Anyway.
Her ankle because I don't want to pull this direction and make her hip work. So I'm just going to stabilize it. Go ahead and slowly come down and then back up. Good. So that is your anterior tib activation. Your posterior tib activation is plantar flexion with inversion. So she's going this direction. So again, I'm going to hold her foot and I'm pulling against the inversion. So go ahead and slowly undo it. And go ahead and plantar flex and invert. Good. Go one more time, invert, more, squeeze it. Now hold it there, don't let me move you. And slowly come with me, so she's getting the eccentric activation here. And relax. So now that we've done some isolated activation, let's do some integrated stuff. So hop up and have her do some balance exercises. So you're going to stand on that same leg you just did activations with, and she's going to go into, let's say instead of a multiplanar reach, instead of doing 1, 2, 3, let's just have your hands on the hips and make circles. All right? Now, as she's doing this, and you as a coach or a trainer are going to be watching her to make sure the hips are completely level. So if you see the hips moving this way and she's starting to shift, you're going to move that hip out to the side, make sure she's neutral. So if she's working at retail and she's typing some stuff up for you, you have no idea that the person behind the desk is doing some weird activations for her feet that turn out, right? So she's doing this, she's looking great. Now let's do an integrated exercise that integrates the upper body with the lower body. We're going to do a reverse lunge, and she's going to do the opposing arm, right? So if she stands on her right leg, it's her left hand that's going to be in the resistance, and you're standing on your right leg. Yeah, so let's go ahead and switch it. Reverse lunge, and instead of a press, she's going to do a row. So go ahead and reach back and stand up. Row, nice. So she's going to lock out that quad, squeeze that glute right there. Go ahead and reach back again and pull up. Now again, this is going to be a more difficult exercise doing a unilateral than if she did both at the same time, because it's easier to balance from her leg if she's using both of her hands. But I take this one away and she's doing the opposite side. She's got some crisscross activation in her body that she's got to stabilize down at her foot. All right, so it's her foot that's stabilizing this whole movement pattern here. All right, guys, that's it. Again, the highlighted version of a lower extremity postural dysfunction fix. So hope you enjoyed it, hope it helped. If you have questions, let us know. So Annie, I'm Rick with NASM.
All right, so we can kind of see like very quickly in this version, if she's got like a foot turnout problem, right? He wanted to inhibit her calves with a little bit of foam rolling, right? And then he lengthened those calves through like a little bit of like static stretching. Then he switched to the other side, did a little bit of anterior and posterior tibialis activation, and then integrated the movement by doing something that was very dynamic, like the lunge into like a row, you know, very complicated, dynamic posture there. So now she has to maintain all that other stuff passively while she's doing something else very actively, right? And that's sort of the approach that we take to, you know, really get our clients to get used to holding their posture in the correct alignment. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to do the overhead squat purposefully, so we can actually see somebody doing this, right? So again, it's total body flexibility. So you're going to have your client stand with their feet shoulder width apart, toes pointed forward. Okay. I'm actually a big fan of like the foot turn out on the squat. You guys, you know, we watched that Squat University video the other day. That kind of helps you find the ideal alignment. In this version of things, because it's a body weight squat, we do want to make sure that it's relatively neutral position there. Because if it's not like neutral, you know, then we're not putting the stretching, the specific type of stretching that we're looking for on these joints. You know, if they do turn their feet out for any version of like squatting where, you know, they're lifting heavy, I'm totally fine with that as long as their knees are also tracking over their toes. You know, I don't want my clients' feet to turn out and knees to come forward, you know, but if their feet are turning out and their knees are going over that perfect alignment, I'm totally fine with that. But in the overhead squat, that's not true. I want the feet shoulder width apart. I want the toes pointing forward. We want the foot and ankle complex in a neutral position with the shoes off. Now, why do we take the shoes off? Because we are looking for limited dorsiflexion. And, you know, I feel like I've been ranting on shoes a lot lately, but if you look at like, you know, modern shoes, you know, they just have a lot of padding on the heels. You know, we see like a lot of padding there. We see a lot of padding there, right? And so it puts our clients, I mean, that's total nonsense. I mean, that's got to be something specific. Oh, it's a dance shoe. Yeah. Like that's got to be a special type of shoe. You know, we see a lot of padding on the heels, putting us into plantar flexion. Good Lord, what is that monstrosity? Putting us into plantar flexion, right? And we don't want to be in plantar flexion if we're trying to assess for dorsiflexion, because it gives our client a leg up. Then you're going to have your clients raise their arms straight overhead with their elbows fully extended, and your upper arms should bisect your ears. So if you look from the side, it should be perfectly in line, you know, with the ears there. And again, you can kind of see like she's got a great sort of example of what we're looking for here, which is, you know, from a side view. We'll talk a lot about this tomorrow, actually, because I think tomorrow is the excessive forward lean day. But again, we're looking at sort of an ideal squat here. You can see if we draw a line that travels, you know, if I go like right from her ankle, right, and travel up the knee right there, and then we go from her hip and we travel like out the shoulders. I mean, those things are like that is practically parallel. Those two lines can travel forever in both directions, and they're never going to touch. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then we're looking at the angle here as well of the shoulder that's staying in line with the angle of the body, you know. So instruct them to squat down into a comfortable position as if they're sitting back into a chair. And you're going to repeat that movement for, you know, 5 repetitions or so. Now, I will say, me personally, I love to make people do like 15. Do I need to do 15? Not really. I can totally see what I need to see in about 5 repetitions. But the added benefit of doing 15 is eventually something is going to break down if I give them enough stress. And number 2, I want this to feel a little bit like a workout. So if I take a look from the anterior view and I get to look at 15 of their reps, and then I take a look from the lateral view and I get them to do 15 reps, I do a posterior view, and I have them do 15 reps, they're doing 3 sets of 15 squats, they're going to feel like they're getting a little bit of a workout in, which is exactly one of my goals for the day, right? But in your textbook, it'll say around 5 times, okay? So our observation views in the regular textbook are just going to be anterior and lateral. However, in this class, because we are going through a lot of fitness assessments, I'm going to teach you guys the posterior view as well. That is the slightly more complex version of this assessment. And basically, you're just going to travel around to the backside and look for a little bit of postural distortions there as well. So anterior view, you're going to mostly pay attention to the foot and ankle complex and the knees. And from the lateral view, you're going to look at the lumbopelvic hip complex and the shoulders. So we're looking at the pelvis, the low back, and the shoulders for any dysfunction. And if you're doing a posterior view, you're going to look at the foot and ankle complex and the lumbopelvic hip complex. And we'll talk about what those mean in later classes. But so if we're looking at the overhead squat here, right? First compensation we are going to see today is a client whose foot turns out. Now, why did our clients like foot turn out? You know, like why do they have like postural distortions in their ankle here? Could be a lot of different things, right? Let's take a look at some of the lists here, right? Because this is, we might be kind of reductive about this and be like, oh, well, that's just ankle distortion, right? Like, so, okay, I'm seeing movement of the ankle. They must have some type of like ankle problem, right? But let's take a look at some of the list of muscles that are probably overactive and underactive here. And they've kind of simplified this list down. I got a slightly more complex version here. But if you look at the overactive muscles, again, we're looking client's foot and ankle complex. Turns out we're going to see overactive soleus, gastrocnemius, and then it says hamstring complex. It's not so much the entire hamstring complex. It really is much more the lateral aspect of the hamstring, which is known as our biceps femoris. In fact, if you go to Nasm's like old table here, and we look at the complex one and that's listed in your CES, we go over here, foot turnout, and there's the slightly more complicated list. This is slightly confusing for my new folks. Well, I mean, it's honestly, it's slightly confusing for kind of all of us. This is where Nasm does have 2 versions of these tables. One is like the basic version that's found in the regular textbook. And this table is the complicated version that's found in the corrective exercise textbook. I'm going to be teaching you guys the corrective exercise approach, because if you know the complex one, you'll naturally know the easier one. So muscles we've got are going to be the soleus. So that is that, you know, calf muscle at the bottom there, right? If we look up the soleus. You can see there's these fibers right here. We're also going to see the lateral gastrocnemius. So they're being a little bit more specific here. Rather than just saying gastrocnemius the way that we did the other day, they do mean particularly those lateral fibers. You guys remember when we were foam rolling and I said, you know, it helps oftentimes to turn the foot out ever so slightly because it's usually that lateral aspect that's really causing most of the problems there. That's why we said that it's usually the outside calf muscle that is the really tight muscle here. So soleus, lateral gastrocnemius. Then we're going to travel up and we're going to see our biceps femoris. So particularly, so your biceps femoris is a two-fibered muscle. I can't see the two fibers in that one. Can you see it in that one? Yeah, okay. So in this picture, they've actually got both of them listed here. So it's kind of, it's always hard to see your biceps femoris's short head because it's hidden underneath your long head. So whenever we're drawing this, there we go. That one kind of works. They got this version. They're kind of letting it peek out from behind. So this right here is your biceps femoris short head, and it starts in the middle of your femur. Actually, this is pretty rare, by the way. You actually don't have a lot of muscles that start in the center of a bone, and then it runs down and it grabs right here. Okay, so it's grabbing your fibula there on the outside. Then here, this is your biceps femoris's long head. Okay, and that's, you know, it's the longer version, right? We actually see this similar arrangement, you know, in our actual biceps muscles. And we also see it in our triceps as well. We've got a short head tricep and a long head tricep. And they just, one is short and one is long. And so like this short head is kind of the one that's mostly responsible for this rotation movement. Because look at this hamstring muscle here. The biceps femoris's long head. You know, that one is, it's attached to the hip. So it can do knee flexion, obviously, but it can also do hip extension. And then here's your medial hamstring. This is your semimembranosus here, and then underneath it, that's your semitendinosus. That's the medial side of the hamstring. Those are the muscles that like often need to kind of work against these two. So you get the medial hamstring here, the lateral hamstring there. Very, very similar arrangement to our calf muscles that we just saw when we looked at like the gastrocnemius and the soleus, right? You can see there's the lateral fibers and then there's the medial fibers, right? And then this soleus, see, it's attached to the fibula as well. So our feet turning out situation is kind of happening up above. Look at this. This is the short head grabbing the fibula. This starts at the fibula and runs down, right? So we're seeing a lot of the stuff on the outside lateral part, and then it's the lateral gastrocnemius, right? This is on the other leg, so I gotta go, you know, laterals on the outside, right? That one's kind of covering up the fibula and then it runs down. So a lot of outside of the calf stuff is going here, which makes sense because, you know, our feet are being pulled towards their outside, right? They're being pulled laterally into that external rotation. So then we go back over here and we see, so there's our biceps femoris short head. Now, we're also going to see our tensor fasciae latae here. And that one's a really weird one. You're like, tensor fasciae latae? That's at the hip. That has nothing to do with my ankle. Why is that turning my foot out? Well, two reasons. Number one, this picture here is just the TFL. But do you see this band that comes all the way down? That's your IT band, right? And it's part of the TFL. It's what your TFL sort of becomes in the end, right? So in this picture, you can kind of see that, right? There's the TFL fibers. This part is the IT band. And guess what? It's grabbing right down here on the tibia, right outside the fibula there. And there is so much fascia around that area. I mean, I guess it's not quite as much fascia as I was looking for. Come on, interwebs. That's a little better. There we go. And there's a non-pixelated one. So you can actually kind of see, right? If you look at this area here, right, there's your fibula. And then this, by the way, your LCL joint, that lateral collateral ligament joint, is going to be right there. You can see it in the middle. And then there's like this little short muscle called your popliteus. There's a little tendon for that. And then there's the biceps femoris. Look at all this like white fascia that's around that area, right? And if we go to like the other side of the joint, right? And we look at the other side of things, here you're going to see like all of these like other like ligaments like kind of holding the whole thing together, right? And then even more on the other side. So all of those muscles are all kind of come down and it gets tied to that fibula there. So what's happening is like from your fibula, we are seeing just a lot of this, right? My foot's going to be like that. And then if I just turn it from the ankle down. So guys, try this out. Stand up right now and bend your knee. Place your hand on the bottom lateral side of your hamstring and then just turn your foot out. You'll feel like a little contraction right there in the back of the hamstring. You're not doing a hamstring curl. You're not actively curling, but you're going to feel that rotation there. And that results in the foot turn out during a squat, right? We see like this excessive foot turnout distortion in our overhead squat, right? Meanwhile, what's probably going to happen most times, we're going to see this kind of happen simultaneously. We're probably going to also notice that the knees end up caving in, even though the feet is turning out. Like ideally, our knees track over our toes while they're turning out. But if that doesn't happen properly, we end up with this excessive, foot turnout posture, right? So that's why the muscles on the list here, which I couldn't find, are going to be the soleus, because that's a very lateral muscle, the lateral gastrocnemius, very lateral, right? The biceps femoris, the lateral hamstring, and the tensor fascia latae. It's the IT band portion of the TFL, the IT band portion of the tensor fascia latae. So that is the lateral aspect there. So those are all the tight muscles turning our foot out, right? Those are all the concentrically shortened muscles. So now, again, we got to flip to the other side of the joint to fix this problem, right? We got to go straight to the other side of the joint to have a positive benefit here. So the muscles we're going to try to activate are all of those medial muscles that are going to pull us back into alignment. So now we're going to aim to turn on the medial gastrocnemius. So if our client is doing, let's say, like a calf press, we're actually going to have them take a slight foot turn in posture while they're doing that. I'm not saying this, by the way. I've seen people do like, man, it's like their toes are together and they're making like a full V. That's a lot of turn in. You're going to cause other problems at that point. But just a slight, like if you're doing a calf press motion, just an ever so slight, sort of toe in there. That's going to have a really positive effect while still trying to maintain that natural like arch is still going to be really important. And that's going to turn on the medial gastrocnemius. Now, we're also going to want to turn on the medial fibers of our hamstring. So again, we want to make sure that we're using the right hamstring muscles here. So maybe I do like a floor bridge with my feet extended away, right? So my feet are a little bit further away from my butt, which is going to put that pressure into my hamstrings. But look at this guy here. His feet are turning out. If he's doing a floor bridge like this, he's going to use his lateral hamstring. Not what we're going for. We're going for the medial hamstring. So probably want to make sure with my client that he's doing a marching. This is also a really good hamstring exercise, by the way. That's not quite the bridge I was looking for, but this is a separate, very good exercise. Where you at? Gift me, internet. Yeah, that's not bad, but that's more of a glute version. Problem is, like most bridges are like glute based. You can see how close people's feet are. That one's pretty far away, but yeah, that's not bad. But we want to make sure we're using the medial hamstring. And honestly, I'm seeing a lot of people in these images turn their feet away. That's not so bad. Okay, so she's got her toes pointing straight forward. That's what we're going to go for. We might even ever so slightly line them up. If I'm going to line them up if I'm not having it straight, which I probably just want to have them straight, I'm just going to go ever so slightly inward, right? And that's going to activate that medial hamstring much, much, much more effectively, right? And I've done this before in class. I've talked about how like so many people use their lateral hamstring. I talk about like the biceps femoris being kind of like a big bad guy in the overhead squat. You know, it's like the central villain of the overhead squat, you know, that and the TFL. Those two muscles are just like constantly screwing up our posture. The reason for that, and you can see it, if I look up hamstring curl, I'm just going to look up a picture of somebody doing a hamstring curl. I'll click the first one here. Yeah, and you can see it just like exactly here. Look at her feet when she gets to the top. What's happening? So she's using her lateral hamstring. She's not using her whole hamstring. It's very important to make sure we keep our clients in alignment. You see it during back extensions. You start doing hamstring curls. So many people just let their feet hang because like they're only paying attention to the hamstring muscles, you know? Foot turn out slightly. That's Scott Herman too, I think. Who's like, you know, he's like a guru. But it's very hard to pay attention to that alignment. It's tough. Like I find myself doing it all the time when I don't mean to, you know? So we're really big on making sure that we're working the medial hamstring here. Then we also want to work our gluteus maximus. Now the glutes are really far away from the foot. So why is the glute inactive? We're going to see the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius here, right? So here's the reason why. And this is a factoid that you guys are going to find in your homework tonight. And this is a factoid that we are going to hear a lot this module. This is the sports mod. So we are constantly we're going to have a whole day on injuries later on in this course. And this is a factoid that's also found in your book as like the example for why someone's feet turn out and why we're working on the glutes here. So when you experience like an injury, right? A lot of times what'll happen in injuries is you'll end up babying the body, right? You'll end up like not using a section of like whatever is injured, right? So the most common injury that we're going to run into in the world of like athletics is going to be ankle sprains, okay? This is the number one thing that we see all the time in sports, right? Daryl, you were talking about this. You got a history of the ankle sprains, right? Like it's just a really common thing, right? When I was a kid, shattered my right ankle. I had 22 fractures in my foot. Like, and doctor looked at me, he was like, yeah, this is just like liquidized. Like, look, I was a little kid, so it, you know, it just kind of healed slowly over time. Little kids will bounce back from anything. But like, what happens when you experience like an ache or a pain very asymmetrically, like you know, on one side of the body compared to the other, you end up like babying that side. So if I sprained my right ankle, what would end up happening is I'm going to end up walking around like this, right? I'm going to walk around and I'm not going to be pushing down on that foot. I'm going to be limping around, right? Now that's obviously like me really injured. But even then, like, let's say like it's been a week since I sprained my ankle, I'm still going to probably walk pretty gingerly on one side and probably a little heavier on the other. So one of the things that they've observed when they've looked at this, and this is in your assessments chapter, one of the things that they've observed is they have found that when you injure your right ankle, you then have this weird side effect of having a decreased glute strength later on, because your medial glute and your maximal glute are not performing abduction or hip extension the way they're designed. They end up not working as much. So when we see a client whose foot turns out, we know that like they have ankle dysfunction and they're not able to use their glutes properly, either the maximus or the medius. So these muscles start to become underactive and they can't push into the floor. So instead what they do is they use other muscles to perform that hip extension. They try to use the hamstrings, right? They try to use the lateral aspects of their gastrocnemius. They find these other muscles to kind of get the job done. That term, by the way, is called relative flexibility. or synergy, and sometimes like we'll see like synergistic dominance, right? And it's where like these either helper muscles or other muscles, they're getting the job done, right? But they're not, it's not the way your body is designed to move. So Marjan, you pointed this out. You guys will actually see this in your homework tonight, but we'll see when somebody like sprains their ankle, they will often have decreased neural drive to their glute muscles because they aren't contracting those glute muscles, and it will alter their posture. It will actually mess up their posture overall. So that's why the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius are on our feet. Ankle distortion turnout problem here, right? And it doesn't, you know, it's very confusing the first time you look at it, right? And by the way, like that glute muscle is supposed to, you know, that's both of these glutes are being inhibited by that biceps femoris short head, right? This hamstring muscle is trying to do the job of the glutes. That's synergistic dominance. That hamstring muscle, or I'm sorry, that TFL muscle is exactly opposite of the gluteus maximus, right? And so it's, again, it's decreasing the neural drive. Your glutes are being shut down by these really overeager other muscles on our overactive list. And then we got two more. We've got the gracilis is going to be underactive, and we're going to see our a tree. There's a tree called a gracilis. We're going to see the gracilis here. This is a little knee stabilizer that lives on the inside of the thigh. It runs from the pelvis here. It is not a big knee contractor. It does a little bit of like adduction. It's actually also acts somewhat as a hip flexor, just slightly. But like most of what this does is like stabilization. And then we got another little tiny short stabilizer back here called your popliteus. Okay, and the popliteus is this little bitty muscle right here. And again, this is acting as like a knee stabilizer, wraps around the knee actually. It does two things. It helps stabilize the knee, and it helps keep your tibia and your fibula like connected. You can see it wrap there, and it's like, hey, let's hold these two bones together, you know. So how do we target stabilizer muscles like that directly? Well, we don't do so much direct targeting. Honestly, most of the time what we do is we do like a little bit of knee stabilization. We just put ourselves into a balance scenario where, you know, how I'm going to contract my popliteus, I'm going to go like this. Right? All these little micro movements that I'm making in my knee are helping me stabilize. So I know I've been talking about the knee a lot here, even though like the dysfunction that we were observing was like the ankle, you know, but like, look at how much of this is happening up the kinetic chain and traveling down. Meanwhile, the bottom of the kinetic chain is also traveling up. And so, you know, again, this is just another example of why we call it the kinetic chain, right? One weak link in that chain, the rest of it experiences dysfunction, right? You got ankle dysfunction, it travels up. You got knee dysfunction, it travels down. You got hip dysfunction, it travels down. You know, I would never make you guys do this. I also didn't keep mine because it wasn't that good. But like, I mean, I probably have a copy of it somewhere in like an old email. But like you know, one of the things that you get when you go to freaking traditional like 4-year college is like your teachers make you read their term papers. Every teacher did it. It's very funny to me. It's like, here's my senior thesis. And I'm like, you know, and it's a guaranteed like 50 pages every time. Like, grr. I will say though, one cool one. So I had a kinesiology professor, and the one that I had to read was how she wrote it on how there is a connection between right ankle sprains and left shoulder impingement. And it's like, what? You know, like, how is this ankle down here affecting the shoulder up here? But again, it's a kinetic chain thing, right? And I won't go too much into this, but if we're talking about the kinetic chain, actually, that's perfect. One of the things that we do kind of tend to see is when you get to the pelvis, it switches sides. So like if we sprain this ankle, That travels up and leads to the hamstring starting to take over. The glutes get weakened, right? And then the body kind of shifts this way. And then rather than traveling up to this shoulder, it usually at the pelvis, usually jumps to the other side. And so then, like, because this is experiencing dysfunction here, it kind of led to dysfunction here. This upper trap muscle gets overactive, the levator scapula over here, the sternocleidomastoid over here, right? And then all of that led to like shoulder dysfunction and scapular impingement, right? And that's kind of what that's 50 pages summarized in what, 5 sentences. Saved you guys a trip, but that's kind of what we see, right? And that's what, like, there is like a very much a connection there, right? Actually, here's a good example where you can kind of see that like side to side dysfunction, right? So this person's got pronation distortion and knee valgus, right? And then over here, they're kind of shifting to the other side of the joint. So this is dropping down in response, right? And it's the Jenga stack, right? If I take a block from over here, where I'm not going to put it on the same side, I'm going to move it to the other side, right? In order to maintain balance. You know, who knew that I was giving you board game strategies when you signed up for the PFT program? So that is.
Still play board games?
What's that?
People still play board games?
Oh my God, how dare you? Yes. God, talk to anybody who was here before you joined us. I've been going off about board games all over the last like month or so.
We all play it digital nowadays.
Oh, gross.
Digital.
Gross. All right. So that's the foot turnout. Any see you, Simon. Any questions or comments, guys? How y'all feeling about the foot turnout stuff? Does that anatomy kind of make some sense? And by the way, does this kind of make the pes planus thing that we kind of, we went over this in class? We're starting to see some of the connections between like, pes planus or pronation distortion and this. Feeling good, guys? I'm seeing some thumbs up around the room. All right. All right, well, let's move into another one. And this is very, very, very connected. But let's go ahead and take a look at our other postural distortion here, the knees caving in. So generally, right, when we see the foot experience that foot turnout, we're also going to see the knees cave in. It's not guaranteed, it's not every time, but generally, if we see this one, we end up also seeing this one, right? Because a lot of the muscles are overlapping. Remember, we saw the TFL is overactive. Well, what does the TFL do? It does internal hip rotation. Oh, look, there's my internal hip rotation, right? We talked about how like we see gluteus medius weakness. What happens when the gluteus medius is weak? Yeah, the knees cave in, right? So we see a lot of like overlap between these two distortions. Oftentimes, if you see one, you see the other, right? And so again, I said, on a barbell squat, I have nothing against somebody who wants to turn their feet out, but I don't like it when my client turns their feet out and then their knees go forward, right? Your knees need to track over your toes when we're squatting, right? They need to travel in that same direction. So muscles that we're going to see, if we go to our table here, we see knees move inward. Now, I will show you the basic version, by the way. So knee valgus, which is knees caving in, right? They're being very simple in the traditional textbook. It's just, we're going to see the TFL, we're going to see the adductors. It's a little bit, it's a lot simpler than what we see in the corrective textbook. But let's go ahead and go to the corrective textbook here. Knees, cave in, adductors, TFL, right? So same list, but with a couple extras. So we're going to see the biceps femoris short head show up again here, right? Again, when we experience external tibial rotation, right, as the tibia externally rotates, that causes the femur to often internally rotate. So this picture here is sort of what we normally want to see, right? If this rotates in, this also can kind of rotate in. But what we're seeing is this in response, right? The tibia externally rotates there. That's knee valgus, right? So adduction, tibial external rotation, and that's also hip internal rotation, right? This is the picture that I drew a million times the other day, right? Like, only it's much better looking than mine. So we see the hip come this way, we see the hip come this way, we see the tibia go that way, we see the feet fall back in this way, right? So that's that dysfunction that we're seeing. And again, they're very commonly linked. So biceps femoris short head, which does that tibial external rotation. Now we're also going to see the vastus lateralis on this list. This is the first time we're actually seeing a quadriceps muscle, but vastus lateralis. So for those of you who might need a refresher on the quads, we got 4 quad muscles, right? And we're going to see 3 vastus muscles, or vasti muscles, if you want to say that, and 1 hip flexor, right? So looking at these, let me just go vastus quadriceps muscles. Come on, there we go. Okay, so this is 2 different legs. And what they've done is they've taken this big quadricep muscle that lives on top and removed it on this picture over here. So we got 3 vastus muscles. Oh, I see. We got 3 vastus muscles. We got the outside, that's the lateral one. That's the vastus lateralis, right? That's the one we're talking about, right? That's the big bad here. Why is it the big bad? Again, kind of similar. If we look at the vastus lateralis's fascia, you'll notice that it wraps around. There we go. This is the picture I was looking for earlier. You can see all this fascia around the outside, right? It gets very like white and connective tissue-y, you know, just a lot of connective tissue there. So now when I contract my vastus lateralis, what kind of happens? It pulls on my biceps femoris short head, it pulls on my IT band, you know, all of that, right? This is why IT band syndrome exists, right? Which they call it runner's knee, right? Runner's knee is this like rubbing sensation out here, and it's where all the fascia gets so freaking tight that it just rubs and rubs and rubs and rubs, and then it feels like, you know, you go for a run, you're playing basketball or you're playing some sports, and you're like, is there like an evil gnome holding a lighter to the outside of my freaking knee? It just feels like your knee's on fire, you know, like, and it is, it's you know, like, and it's just rubbing all day, you know. So there's our vastus lateralis, right? Now, in the middle, you've got your vastus intermedius, and then you've got your vastus medialis on the inside. So you've got a lateral vastus muscle, a medial vastus muscle, and then you've got an in the middle vastus muscle. Okay, and over top of all 3 of them, really, but it very much covers up the intermedius one, is your rectus femoris, which I don't know why they cut the bottom of the rectus femoris here, but it's going to run from the hip all the way down to the shin here. And by the way, you look at this, right? These are all connected to just the femur. Femur. They all originate on the femur, and then they all go to the tibia. This one originates on the hip and travels all the way down. That's why these 3 quadricep muscles are only responsible for knee extension. And this quadriceps muscle is responsible for knee extension and hip flexion. So the rectus femoris is on our hip flexor list. So there it is, the vastus lateralis. Why the lateralis? Again, it shares fascia with the IT band, which, you know, we've got the TFL listed here. Biceps femoris is short head as well. And then the lateral gastrocnemius is on our list again, right? That lateral calf muscle, which again has fascia, has fascia that travels up to that lateral aspect, right? So all of those lateral muscles are pulling, causing the internal rotation of the femur, the adduction of the femur, and the tibial external rotation. So a lot of overlap between these 2 lists, right? And that's why we usually, I mean, I say usually, I'd say it's at least a 50-50 chance, maybe a little higher. If you see a foot turn outer, you're going to see a knee cave in, you know, most of the time. So probable underactive muscles, what do? We're going to flip to the other side of the joint, right? So instead of the adductors, that's an adduction, right? We're going to go straight to the gluteus medius again. Instead of the TFL, we're going to go straight to the gluteus maximus again, right? Now, we are going to use the VMO. We're going to use our vastus medialis oblique. That's opposite of our other quadricep. Just exactly the same as like we went from the biceps femoris, right, which was the lateral. I closed it. That was the lateral hamstring. We're going to the biceps. Erase it. Just like we went from, I'm like looking at my quad. I'm going to minimize this. Just like we went from the biceps femoris, which was the lateral hamstring muscle, we go to the medial hamstring muscle. Same concept. We're going from the lateral quadricep to the medial quadricep. We're switching to the other side of the joint in the frontal plane. And that's like one thing that's like slightly confusing, because a lot of times when we switch from one side, we go straight to the other side of the joint. We often go from here to here, right? Or we go from here over to here. We go from like one side of the bone to the other, and it's usually like very front to back. Sometimes it's left to right, and sometimes it's transverse, right? It depends on what plane of motion you're experiencing dysfunction in, right? In this case, we are experiencing frontal plane dysfunction, so we move across the joint side to side instead of front to back. So instead of a vastus lateralis, we're going to use the vastus medialis. Instead of the biceps femoris, we're going to use the medial hamstring. And instead of the lateral gastrocnemius, we're going to use the medial gastrocnemius. I mean, honestly, I could take, let's see, I'll do this. There's me with my head down. Let's just take this list. And look at these two sides of the joint, right? Adductors, opposite of the gluteus medius. Biceps femoris, opposite of the medial hamstring. So honestly, those should be across from our TFL instead of gluteus maximus. Lateralis, lateral versus medial. That was literally the opposite every single time. They didn't line up very well. Somebody should call Nasm and be like, organize your ish. But like, it literally is just directly across the joint, you know? Totally the opposite side every time. Now remember, guys, it's not always the opposite side. It's not always an antagonist muscle directly. Sometimes it's a synergist muscle that is shutting things down. You know, for instance, why did this quadriceps muscle get so overactive? Probably because it's trying to do the job of the gluteus maximus. You know, this is also probably a very quaddy squatter. You know, like this is probably somebody who does feel like when they squat, they probably feel it more in their quads than they do in their glutes. Your squat's supposed to be for your quads. Absolutely. No arguments here, but it is primarily a glute exercise. Remember when we were doing floor bridges the other day and I said, look, I have no problem if you feel your floor bridge in your hamstrings, but I don't want you to feel it more in your hamstrings than you feel it in your glutes, right? Same thing is happening here. That is kind of showing us a little bit of synergistic dominance. So that is the knees cave in portion. Any questions on those muscles? Questions on that list? That all makes sense, guys?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so we do have one that is not in your standard textbook. You guys will have to crack open the corrective exercise textbook to see this one. But the occasional knee varus situation. We don't see a lot of this, but it'll happen sometimes. This is the knee cave out climb, the bow-legged posture. Sometimes this is often, like a lot of the pictures we're going to see are actually like bone deformities. the internet it's very difficult for us to just kind of separate these in general. But you will sometimes see like the occasional like bow-legged client who maybe is somebody who like, developed rickets when they were at a young age. That's like a calcium deficiency that causes the bones to grow they kind of bend instead of like as straight levers. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about somebody with like bad posture, right? This is somebody who usually stands feet together, and then they usually will cave their feet out a little bit, right? So a lot of times you'll see them stand kind of like this. They'll bring their like feet together. Sometimes they might even like just toes together, and then they love like this kind of thing. And this is like their standing posture, right? I also have noticed this myself. They also tend to be I think they're just very tense people a lot of times. So what the heck is causing this? What is kind of, if we see like, the extremely knee caved out client, right? The knee varus squat, right? That is going to be kind of this guy here almost. You can see like he's got fairly straightforward feet. And this is probably somebody who's been coached. I don't know if he actually could be purposefully showing this. Knees out, toes out in the squat. Yeah, actually, I think this guy's actually talking in this article about how to properly line up. I would argue he's not in the best alignment, actually. I assume. I don't know what he's got in his article. I'm not going to badmouth the guy. But what I will say is like this is actually landing outside our toes because he's got really pushed out knees, which we're always saying. We're like, push your knees out, push your knees. We're always, that's like classic squat coaching, because so many people cave in. This guy's maybe taking a little too far because his toes are still going forward. If he's going to have that much push out, he needs to leave his heel where it is and bring his toe over here. So yeah, no, that's fine. In fact, that's actually okay. So what is knees cave out? What does this mean for the excessive knee varus, right? This is what Google image. What is that? I mean, this is, again, same thing. Toes are forward, even though his knees are caving out, right? What does that mean? Well, let's take a look. Knees. So knees move outwards. Here are our tight muscles. We are finally going to see overactive glute muscles. Holy cow. We never thought we'd say, we got the overactive glutes here. But the big one, the first one we're going to see is the piriformis. By the way, this can be a real pain in the butt problem. And I actually mean that literally. No pun intended necessarily, but you will often have a problem with the pain in the butt in particular, and then it will often shoot down the leg because the piriformis muscle lives right here. It's underneath your glutes. It's the short little muscle that runs from your sacrum, bottom of your, top of your tailbone is officially this, but I think of the sacrum as the tailbone, and then it runs across and grabs here. So this muscle pulls and it externally rotates the femur. It also does a little bit of hip abduction, but like not a lot. So it's right there, right? Now, this bottom of your sacrum, see these little holes right here? There is a nerve that runs out of those holes known as your sciatic nerve. And this muscle can sometimes get so tight that it will actually pinch that sciatic nerve. And when you touch nerves, what happens? They create signals, right? So what will often happen is people will feel pain in the butt and it will often travel down their leg. They'll describe it as a shooting leg pain. You'll hear that phrase a lot in your careers, guys. That is sometimes known as Piriformis Syndrome. And it is a tight piriformis. So how do we fix that? Honestly, best stretch you've got for it. We need to kind of pull it away, right? Couple different versions. There's the classic figure 4 stretch. If you know anybody who has sciatica, is a great stretch for that. This version here, and you'll notice she's doing a really good job. Keep your body in alignment on the other side. What will often happen when you try to do this is that this leg will kick this way, And then that allows the back pelvis here to shift back. And then all of a sudden it takes the stretch away from the piriformis. And it looks like you're doing it, but it's a very sneaky trick of the body. So keep it in alignment here. Keep this all the pelvis level and the leg square. And then your other leg just lines up and you're going to push that down as much as you can. That's a really good one for people who honestly, their back pain's so bad they can't get on the floor. And then pigeon pose is the other really big one. Pigeon pose, there it is. So that she's halfway through pigeon pose there. But that yoga stretch, right? Good Lord, internet, come on. All right, pigeon pose. This one. And you lay down, if you can lay down. So we don't see that very often, but we'll see it every now and then. Piriformis syndrome we will see, but it doesn't always come along with knees cave out. It's like you don't have to be a knees cave out client to have piriformis syndrome. You can still just get this. And some people, guys, whew, this is tragic. Some people are born with a deformity where that nerve will actually run through the piriformis muscle and it will grow around it over time. Crazy. And that's usually that's a surgery thing. Now we are going to see the biceps femoris. Now that's a little surprising considering that we saw the biceps femoris on the knees cave in list. Why the heck is the biceps femoris on the knees cave out? Well, notice the difference. This says biceps femoris. Whoops, over here. I'm on the, let's do this. So I don't do that again. We see the biceps femoris and it doesn't say biceps femoris short head. It says biceps femoris in general. So this is the long head of the biceps femoris, traveling all the way up the thigh, right? The one that grabs here, you actually see it running underneath there, and then runs all the way from the hip down to the femur, right? So this person's probably really tight in their hamstrings in general, not just behind the back of the knee, the whole hamstring. We'll see a tight TFL here. That's another very surprising one. You can understand why this isn't in the regular textbook, by the way. There's a lot of contradicting muscles and you're like, what? Right? It's like Lex Luthor donating to charity. The bad guy's doing something good. Why? You know, and it is why it's on the confusing list. So the TFL here is very tight. Right, that's going to live. It's actually not in this picture here, but it would live here to here. And that is not so much because of the hip extension part of it. It's because of the rotation part of it. So their hip gets very tight. If you look at your TFL, TFL and glute maximus. There it is. Again, look at all this fascia, guys. Look at all of that fascia here. One of the tight muscles we're about to see is our gluteus minimus, which is a short little butt muscle that lives under the gluteus medius and comes all the way down. And then we see the gluteus medius there as well. So the TFL, gluteus minimus, and gluteus medius all run to the same place. Same thing with the piriformis, right? So those glute muscles, actually, I can go to my first picture. There it is. There's your gluteus medius. There's your gluteus minimus, which lives directly underneath it, just on a smaller section, right? All of it grabs the same fascia. Piriformis, same fascia. TFL, same fascia. So they all kind of pull on one another when they get tight. So we want to kind of loosen that up as best we can. And that's very confusing the first time you see it. Because I remember getting my corrective certification and being like, why would a cave inner and a cave outer have the same problem? It's not so much a muscle contractile thing. It's really just a sharing fascia thing. Arlene's with us. Arlene, as a massage therapist, right? I mean, I'm sure you feel fascial lines all of the time. Fascia just loves to tie together, you know?
But I will say that not even just as a massage therapist, but as a person with piriformis issues, it is hard to even get somebody to get in there and be able to massage that.
Oh, yeah. This
especially without feeling like a perv. Like when you're trying to explain to somebody the issue you're having and they're like, I'm like, no, seriously, it's,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
it's like, I mean, it's the middle. It is the middle of the butt in all ways.
the way I
Middle, top, and
always
bottom.
worked that area was with my heel.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah, I would like sit on the massage table, put their knee out, and I, stick my heel like right where the sits bones is at.
Ugh.
Yeah, but I've had issues with it, and then to go to somebody and try to explain it, it's like, no, I'm serious. I need you to do this.
Oh my God. Ugh. So we can roll it.
Daryl is cracking me up.
Yeah, I know. You're dying over there.
Wait, I'm cracking you up? Wait. I'm so dead. That's why I got on mute.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the very few muscles in the body that we foam roll that is considered deep. Foam rolling is not very intensive in terms of like the pushing, because it's just a large amount of surface area. It's why a lacrosse ball hurts so much more. It's not because it's harder. It's because there's just less surface area. The same amount of body weight is coming to a sharper point, so it pokes harder. This is a very kind of rare example of times where we actually foam roll the piriformis, because it is somewhat exposed under this like little bit of tissue here. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this is about where you want to place that roller, which is why you see people like cross one leg over the other while they're doing it. They're trying to pull the glute fibers apart and thin it out so that they can get that piriformis exposed. So this is how you foam roll that piriformis. Very good example of sort of what we're working on there. And again, it's just an example of like sharing fascia. And fascia is just like webbing, it's just covering everything and it all kind of pulls together. Now, underactive muscles, rarely on the list, but we are going to see the adductors, right? So you know what I'm going to do? The adductor machine. A lot of people make fun of this machine, and I think that is actually very deserved, because a lot of people use it when they don't need to use it. We have so many people who have knees cave in problems, but this machine where you're going to squeeze, actually she's doing the abduction version of it. That's the combo machine. We want the inner thigh one, right? Squeezing in on that inner thigh is actually a very good way to work on this. I'm probably personally not going to use the machine. Instead, I'll probably do something, because the other one that's underactive is, again, the medial hamstring complex here. So my favorite way to fix this is a floor bridge with adduction, right? So get a physio ball. That's one of the little tiny squishy balls, and squeeze in with the thighs while you're doing it. That's going to ensure that you're using your adductors and your medial hamstring, and it's not a glute exercise in this example. I mean, it is still, your glute's certainly there helping, but again, it becomes primarily, look at how far away her feet are. She's primarily doing the hamstring version of this. It's going to be very important to make sure the toes don't turn out, right? We keep them pointing forward, right? Trying to activate that medial hamstring and that adductor complex. Now, the last one on the list that we need to strengthen is going to be the gluteus maximus. And this is an example of what I said earlier. It's not always an antagonist muscle. Sometimes it's a synergist muscle. This main agonist, the gluteus maximus, has been shut down by the other glute muscle synergists and this biceps femoris hamstring muscle, which is a synergist. Knees cave out clients are probably people, honestly, I wish I could find a picture. There's no way I'm going to find the picture of it that I need. But if I looked at like, those of you who know that like I'm like the way that I'm a baseball fan, I was a big Ken Griffey Jr. fan back in the day. I grew up in Seattle in the 90s, huge Griffey fan. And he had a history of hamstring problems his whole career, and it traveled up his back, and he had like low back problems. And he was an example. If you ever look, he had a really bad anterior pelvic tilt, and he had, I guarantee you, he was a knee cave outer. I actually have no actual proof of that, because I can't, like, what am I going to do? Find a picture of, it's all going to be pictures of him like swinging, but he had a history of like hamstring tears all the time. and he had a lot of like hip flexor problems. And normally those things would be on other sides of the joint. But in his case, like that was where he had his dysfunction. And he never really came back from those hamstring tears, you know, once he went to Cincinnati. And so like, you know, if we could have just gotten the glutes turned on properly, which probably meant like loosening up his hip flexors, guarantee that would have had a much more positive effect. So those are our three main distortions. I do have example programs. We're going to look at those in just a moment, but I do want to finish off talking about the overhead squat today. So we are not going to look at these other distortions today. That would be crazy. We are going to be, this is where the PowerPoint and the organization of this class gets a little weird. We are going to move into other assessments starting like Monday. But we're going to keep working our way through the overhead squat because we've got way more distortions to talk about. So I'm going to move into pushing and pulling, and then we're going to circle back to the overhead squat. I'm going to move into a bench press assessment, and we're going to circle back to the overhead squat because we got a lot of different distortions to look at and example programs to sort of see. So other assessments we've got, I'm going to skip past that. We've got the single leg squat assessment. Now, in your regular textbook, you're really just going to look at one thing. You're going to look to see, does the knee cave in? Guess what? It means exactly the same thing that it does during the overhead squat if their knees cave in. So this is a single leg assessment designed to assess ankle proprioception, core strength, and hip joint stability, right? So have your client stand on one leg with their hands on their hips, have them raise one leg up off the floor. It doesn't have to be up here, doesn't have to be out here, doesn't have to be back here even. It just can be just as if they are standing, almost like they're ready to do another squat. And then you're just simply going to have them squat to a comfortable position. Doesn't have to be all the way down to like chair height, and then they're going to come right back. And we're looking to see, does the knee cave in, right? And if it does, same list of muscles, literally identical, overactive and underactive muscles. This is an example of us being like, wow, really great squat. I didn't see anything, right? It looks, you know, you look great. Let's give you some more stress. So we give them the more advanced version. So the single leg squat is a progression to the regular overhead squat, where we are looking for something to eventually break down. So have them do 3 to 5 reps, repeat on the other side, okay? We are only looking from one view, and it's the knee complex. So what we're looking for, does that knee cave in? I don't know how this girl did this. That's so much cave in, and then she still got this leg out of the way. But that's the adductor complex, biceps femoris short head, TFL, vastus lateralis, and lateral gastrocnemius. Literally the same list as knees cave in during the overhead squat. So let's look at an example program here for these distortions. So you guys are going to find on Canvas today, and when you look at the email, you will find 2 extra attachments today in addition to the homework. You are going to see some example programs. So this is an example program for a client whose feet turn out and knees cave in, okay? So what we're gonna go with, right? Feet turn out, knees cave in. Look at how many of those muscles like overlap, right? If you take a look back over, I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit so I can show them together. So here's the foot turn out, here's the knees cave in, soleus, lateral gastrocnemius, right? And biceps femoris short head and TFL. So then all we do, right, we already got biceps femoris short head, we already got TFL. All we got to get is, and we already got lateral gastrocnemius, adductors, and vastus lateralis. Now that is a lot of muscles to have to work on, right? That's a lot to have to warm up every single session. Chances are, guys, what you're going to really experience is maybe you try all of them, and then you start to look and see what muscles are actually causing these things, you know? And you're like, okay, it's really not that one, and you take that out of your warm-up. So we went with a little bit of a shorter list here. We went with SMR for the calves. That's going to be particularly the lateral side of the calves, right? We went with the hamstrings, particularly the lateral side, because that's where the biceps femoris is, the TFL, and the adductors, right? I didn't SMR the Vastus Lateralis for two reasons. Number one, it's real painful and your client will straight up walk out of the gym. Rolling the quadriceps is tough for most people for two reasons. Number one, they're really tight. Number two, they also they're really close to the bone. There's not a lot of like space and there's not a lot of fat on the quads. And so just because of all that, it just really is painful. So people are like, I hate you. And then they leave. So that's one reason why I took that out of there. So then we are going to do a static wall calf stretch. That's the one we practiced in class the other day. That's for the lateral gastrocnemius. I might even do a slight toe in, when they're doing that wall calf stretch. I might have them do a slight like toe pointed in situation so that I ensure that their heel, is not, they're not naturally pointing their toe out and, only stretching the medial side, right? Then we got that standing biceps femoris stretch. So this stretch right here is pretty tough. It is not pleasant. But right here, this is that hamstring stretch. Now you'll notice what she's doing is she's squaring her hips up and she's even going across the body, right? She's actually going to go across the body here. So how many times have you guys seen somebody do this hamstring stretch, right? They bring their leg up, right? My hip's opening up here, right leg to right hand. You see that all the time, right? Try that out. You will notice it stretches the medial side of the hamstring. You will feel it in here and you'll feel nothing on that other side. So what we need to do, and I can't do it that high, it'll kill me, is we need to do this version here, right? We take our hamstring, we take our foot up, and rather than my hip opening up, I'm going to square my hips back to that. So now it's coming straight out away. By the way, notice, did you guys see that? My foot turn? That is my hamstring going, no, right? So I got to make sure that's straight. God. This is a very tight muscle for me. So we go here, bring the hands together and cross over the midline. So if I go anti, I am telling you guys, I'm feeling this directly right behind my knee right now. That's the short head, middle of the femur to the outside there, right? And then if I get really good at it, I can then do the hinge forward as it. So if you are going to do that, like one here, I don't hate this stretch, but most people do the medial hamstring. If you're going to do it, just go opposite arm. It'll help balance you out and hopefully get the entire hamstring rather than just the inside hamstring, which that inside hamstring is just, we just don't need to stretch that. Like, so many people have underactive medial glute hamstrings, medial hamstrings. We need that thing. Next one we got is the standing TFL stretch. That's the one we practiced in class the other day. So again, this version here. What the? What is this website? It's so weird.
That's the side being stretched. And then step this right.
I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, you're getting TFL, right? It's a hip flexor and an internal rotator. So what do? We bring, this is from my textbook, by the way. This is from Nasm 3rd edition, this picture. We bring the leg back into hip extension, and then he's kind of opening up his hip. 3rd edition's old. We lean across the body with square hips, right? So hip extension, foot external rotation instead of internal rotation, square the hips, arm up and lean. And there it is, right in the hip there, the TFL. You'll also see other versions. There's a lot of TFL stretches out there. You can see like this is kind of a weird one, but pretty effective. You'll see this one sometimes, pretty popular. Any version of this would have worked. Standing adductor stretch. Now, there are different versions. This is the one we practiced in class the other day, which is why, these are all the ones we're doing. Now, I will say, don't do this. Like, I love this alignment here. That looks great. But by turning his foot away into external rotation, this becomes almost a hamstring stretch. And again, it's the medial hamstring, which, stop it. right? So we want to make sure that as we're lunging, the toe is pointing forward. She's still pointing her toe out a little bit. Forward, forward, forward with that toe. That's really important to ensure that like this is a frontal plane movement. If we turn it, it becomes transverse, right? The adductor is a frontal plane muscle. So those are all of our stretches. That turns off our overactive stuff and hopefully will allow our underactive stuff to get working. So we went with the floor bridge. It's going to be a good opportunity for us to focus on the medial hamstring. We went with a modified side iso abs with hip abduction. So this is a gluteus medius exercise right here. So she's going to go into a side plank. So she's getting a little bit of like core action there. Love that. And then by raising this leg up, she's using her medial glute so that she can do hip abduction, right? Here's just a regular side iso abs, not a modified, with hip abduction. And that would be the progression, right? Like this would be the more advanced of the two. Right there, that's a really good exercise for that medial glute. And it happens to be pretty good for the core as well. So we got a core and another core exercise. We wanted to go with a little bit of a balance exercise here. So we went with that single leg balance with reach again, right? So reaching with the foot, frontal, sagittal, transverse, probably just going to do the frontal and transverse only. And then lastly, we went with like a squat jump to stabilization. This is an athlete program, so we got a little bit explosive with it this time, right? And that's a really good opportunity to focus on learning how to keep those knees in alignment. Chances are my client's going to want to squeeze their knees in while they're squatting. So I can have them do this explosive movement. Really good way to wake up the glutes because it's so explosive. And I'm going to encourage them to push their knees out. I'm going to pay very close attention. I'm probably standing right in front of them, looking directly at the knees, right? And that way we ensure that they stay in alignment the entire time without that buckling sensation. So I strengthened my medial gastrocnemius, my medial hamstring by making sure the toes are pointing forward, right? I got a really good like calf press during that jump, right? My gluteus maximus and medius with the abduction and the floor bridge and the squat jump, right? And then I'm working on these stabilizers, the gracilis and the popliteus. They have to stabilize while I'm not only balancing with my single leg balance exercise, but also while I'm jumping. I got to learn how to not wobble my knees, right? So all of it's kind of coming together in, you know what is this going to take? 3 sets of 20, 3 sets of 10 each, 3 sets of 8, 0 seconds of rest. We do it as a circuit with 30 seconds there. This will probably take what? 5 minutes at the most. There's maybe a 10-minute warm up. So I've got 15 minutes of movement prep before I get into maybe an athletic, very explosive day. And that's how I get, again, overactive stuff turned off, underactive stuff turned, on. And that's it, guys. Any questions on that program? Why we picked what we picked or anything like that?
No, that was excellent.
Cool.
A little bit of a review for me.
Yeah, right. It's nice that this kind of goes in this order. So like I said, we're gonna start moving into like push-pull stuff. So we're starting looking more at upper body dysfunction, but we will continue to work through the rest of the overhead squat. By the time this course is over, we will want to have gotten through all of the major overhead squat distortions.
That would be
all
cool.
right. What's that, Marjan?
So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the idea, right? Like, that's why, we've got like the cardio mods coming up in the future. These are like the 2 movement mods. So it's like it's like cardio and nutrition mods and then movement mods. And like that way
Yeah, that's I mean, I like it because it's like reviewing every day, like when you repeating it and we just hearing it over and over. So that's
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the idea. All right, guys, you are on to your weekend. I hope you have a wonderful time, and I will see you guys on Monday.
All right.